was lovely, Julia. Thank you very much. Our scripture reading this morning is from the book of Matthew, chapter 5, verse 16. And I read, "Let your light shine before others, so that they may see your good works and give glory to your Father in heaven." Light. Well, today the light is shining brightly, both here inside the chapel, from our chandeliers and our wall sconces, but also from our collective energies. And it was evidently shining brightly outdoors too this morning at sunrise, around 7:14 a.m., I think, when Punxsutawney Phil came out of his burrow. He saw his shadow. Now, according to legend, this means we're in for another 6 weeks of cold weather. And I did see that there was perhaps snow in the forecast for later this week. So happy Groundhog Day. Throughout Northern Europe, various nationalities developed their own traditions, often tied to animals, mostly bears, badgers, hedgehogs, that in early February were beginning to rouse themselves from their winter slumber. The belief came about that these animals would wake up from their hibernation and appear, foretelling what the rest of the winter would be like, similar to how Groundhog Day is celebrated today. The idea stems from the fact that animals have the possibility of seeing their shadows if it is sunny out. When it is sunny in the winter, the air is usually cold and drier. Now, although sunniness may be a good indicator of how the weather is on any given winter day, I don't think it necessarily predicts how the weather will be over the next 6 weeks, do you? So let's hope he's wrong. But nonetheless, the German tradition was brought to the United States by immigrants. In Pennsylvania, the badger was replaced by a groundhog, a marmot in the squirrel family that's also known as a woodchuck, which spends its winters in hibernation. Here in the United States, February the 2nd is Groundhog Day, the day on which every television station in the nation cuts to a live remote from Punxsutawney, Pennsylvania, to see if an oversized rodent named Punxsutawney Phil, having awoken from his long winter's nap, will see his shadow when he emerges. If he does, we're in for another 6 weeks of winter. If he doesn't, spring is on the way. The literal-minded, of course, like to point out that spring will come no matter what a groundhog in Pennsylvania might see, and that it arrives on the vernal equinox, March 20th or 21st, depending on the year. Others point out the seeming illogic of the tradition. The groundhog sees his shadow when the weather is clear and sunny. If the skies are overcast, his shadow will be nowhere to be seen. Punxsutawney Phil's appearance has become a huge media event, and he's most viewed on Groundhog Day. Tens of thousands of people come to the city where only about 6,000 people reside. A group called the Inner Circle, which wears top hats and speaks in Pennsylvania Dutch dialect, conducts the ceremony. The president of the Inner Circle speaks to Phil in groundhogese, which only he can understand. Now, although organizers of the day say that Phil is never wrong, the records show that he's only been right about 40% of the time. 40%. Many other cities across the United States and Canada hold similar events on this day. Another prominent groundhog is Staten Island Chuck from New York. Sometimes other animals besides groundhogs are used as well. No matter where people are on February 2nd of every year, they keep watching out for animals and their shadows, hoping that the winter will soon end. One thing that I find interesting is that even though thousands of people travel to Gobbler's Knob in Pennsylvania every year to witness the groundhog make his prediction, Meteorologists around the country give Punxsutawney Phil this accuracy rate of only about 40%. According to Storm Facts Almanac, these records date way back to the groundhog's first recorded prediction in 1887. The groundhog is right only about 40% of the time. 40, let's remember that number. There are two other celebrations on this day that I'd like to talk about. First, there's Candlemas Day. Candlemas Day, also known as Feast of the Purification of the Virgin Day, or Meeting of the Lord Day, or Presentation of Christ in the Temple Day, is a Christian holiday that celebrates the early life of Jesus. In particular, it celebrates his presentation at the temple. Candlemas takes place 40 days after the celebration of Jesus' birth, after Christmas, because religious law said that women were purified 40 days after giving birth to male children, meaning the Virgin Mary would be purified on February the 2nd and could enter the temple on that day. Again, 40 is the significant number. At the time of Jesus' birth, the custom was for the mother of a male child to present him at the temple 40 days after his birth, along with a lamb and a pigeon as sacrifice. Now, Luke's gospel tells us that Mary and Joseph were poor and could not afford a lamb. So Jesus was presented in the temple with 2 turtle doves for sacrifice. And today, turtle doves are a symbol of friendship and love. Jesus' presentation is recorded in the Bible in Luke chapter 2, verses 22 through 40, where it's stated that a man named Simeon, who was at the temple, called Jesus a light for revelation to the Gentiles. This reference to light is why the day is called Candlemas. Candles are a symbol for Christ, who called himself the light of the world. And as our metaphysical faith teaches us, we too have that same Christ light within. Candlemas is celebrated in Mexico as Dia de la Candelaria. And during Candelaria celebrations, candles are blessed, then lit, in celebration to Jesus being the light of the world. In AD 638, Sophronius, Patriarch of Jerusalem, proclaimed the importance of the celebration in his sermon to the church. He said, "Our bright shining candles are a sign of divine splendor, of the one who comes to expel the dark shadows of evil and make the whole universe radiant with the brilliance of his eternal light." Our candles also show how bright our souls should be when we go to meet Christ. The candles are generally considered to represent the inner light of Christ, which he brought to share with the world. For the church, Candelaria remains a day of hope and light. It's a time to honor the Lord as the light of the world and to remind us that we too have that same bright light within us. Now, very few Christian religious groups actually celebrate Candlemas today, and I really know of no metaphysical organizations that recognize it. However, when viewed from the message of what it represents, a light within, it really does hold very special spiritual significance for us. The date of February 2nd places the Candlemas celebration 40 days after Christmas and continues the religious cycle that leads up to Easter Sunday. So what is the significance of 40 days? 40 has long been a spiritual number, both in the Bible and in many other religions. The 40 days of Lent, Christ's 40 days in the desert, 40 days after mourning, 40 days of rain before the dove was sent out from Noah's Ark. 40 is the magic number for other things in life too. Did you know that it takes 40 days to mend broken bones or to recover from surgery? And in the days of the worldwide plague, the quarantine period was 40 days. And there's an old saying that it takes 40 days to master a new skill. Rudolf Steiner indicates that it is this holy period of time, 40 days, for the child's soul and spirit to be comfortable in its new body. And doctors specializing in integrative medicine recommend that the mother needs this time, 40 days, to reclaim her own physical body and for the whole family to adjust to the new child. Now, going back to Candlemas, also important to know is this poem that I came across. It's an ancient English poem that reads, "If Candlemas Day be fair and bright, winter will have another flight. But if it be dark with clouds and rain, winter is gone and will not come again." What does that sound like? Groundhog Day. As time went by, the Christian origins of the various Candlemas Day customs faded into the background and were now left with Punxsutawney Phil. But for those who remember the words of Simeon, Groundhog Day will always be Candlemas, the feast of the presentation, and the light that shines bright on the beloved rodent will always remind us of the light of the world and the light within each one of us. Now, additionally, the date of February 2nd, 40 days after Christmas, also happens to be the midpoint between the winter solstice and the spring equinox, which is the basis for various ancient European celebrations that commemorate the annual beginnings of the agriculture season. This day is known as Imbolc Day, celebrating the ascent of spring from the days of darkness. Imbolc is a time of contemplation, time to think about the year that has passed, time to think about the mistakes or the successes that we've had, and what we've learned from these to help us achieve our goals, dreams, and ambitions for the coming year. Imbolc asks us to consider leaving behind that which no longer serves us, and instead focus on our new aspirations. Imbolc is an ancient Celtic holiday celebrating the very first stirrings of new life, the earliest breaths of spring. Even though there may still be snow on the ground where you are, even if it's freezing cold outside, we are beginning to feel the very earliest hints of spring rising in our spirits. After months of turning inward, of hibernation and rest, life is beginning to stir again, just like the groundhog. And depending on where you are, you may be seeing the first spring flowers beginning to show signs of life. Just this past week, I noticed a few daffodils trying to poke up through the snow. Spiritually, this is a time of new life coming into manifestation. We may only be seeing the tiniest hints of life above the surface, but things really are beginning to stir in the darkness. Just like nature is beginning to awaken after its dormant period, we are also reawakening with new dreams and exciting new plans. This time of year, our spirits are beginning to stretch and to shake off the doldrums of winter. And with this awakening comes a much-needed cleansing. Imbolc brings this final cleansing for our spirits. This is the time to clear out the dirty old clutter and the things that died within us during the winter in order to prepare for the exciting new growth to come. These last few months of turning inward and descending into the darkness were all about identifying the things within us that we're ready to let go of. This is now the time to let go of those things for once and all. Often Imbolc is a time of real transition and change. This is a time of leaving what is safe and comfortable in order to grow more fully into yourself. Make no mistake about it. The reality is that change can be hard. We're all creatures of habit. We like things that are familiar and comfortable. But real change requires us to let go of all of that. We have to set aside what we know and step into a new way of being. And that can be really uncomfortable at times. Imbolc is a time of facing these challenges. It's a time of being tested. So ask yourself this: do you have the strength required to make real lasting change? Can you leave what is safe, comfortable, and familiar in order to grow more fully into yourself? I think the answer is yes, because this is also the time when your winter dreams are beginning to stir with new life. In closing, like the groundhog that makes headlines this time of year, now is the time to wake up from your long winter's nap and not be afraid to stick your neck out from your own inner world. And like Candlemas, now is the time to let your light shine. Like Imbolc, this is the time to leave behind what no longer serves you and bring your goals, dreams, and ambitions, all those things you've been thinking about, out into the world. Know that the growing energy of the season is supporting you in that powerful work. Now, to help you with this, I've left space on the back of your bulletin where you can jot down your thoughts. Start by listing just 2 things for each. Think about 2 things that you can do to let your light shine. List 2 things that no longer serve you that you choose to leave behind. And then focus on 2 new goals, dreams, and ambitions that you'd like to bring to fruition. Start with just 2 things for each, which, who knows, may lead you to pulling out a notebook where your list may grow to 40 things for each. Remember, 40 is that magic number today. I hope you're able to embrace this time of new beginnings and change, because this is how your spirit grows and evolves. Remember, just as Candlemas remains a day of hope and light, a time when Jesus is honored as the light of the world, it's also a time to remind ourselves that we too have that same Christ light within us. Hold that candle up high, just like on the back of your bulletin, just like Punxsutawney Phil. Don't be afraid to stick your neck out and let your light shine for all to see. And may it be so.